So here we are today on the first video of this series with drawing in Procreate on the iPad. So as you can see there, I've got an iPad, and that's an iPad Mini 5, which is a small iPad, but it has the same screen as the new iPad Air and the iPad Pros with a good screen to draw on. I think I might have to invest in a new camera as well. I think you can just about make out everything on the iPad there, but it is slightly blurry, so I'm going to have to upgrade my camera at some point. So anyway, back to the video. So I put a little vote up in the community tab, and most people were for these videos. So here's the first one, so we'll see how it goes. And if it's a success, we'll do some future videos with DigiArt and Procreate. Anyway, I'm gibbering on, so let's get back to the video. What we've done so far is we've used the Ellipse Tool, which is selected by selecting Select. And if you put your finger on a screen while creating your ellipse, you will get a perfect circle. So far we've put the one circle up, which is our eyeball, the white of the eyeball. So we'll have 3 circles to make up our eyeball. So I kind of draw this as I would, or paint this, draw and paint this as I would in real life, or should I say using traditional methods sort of thing. Of course you can't move your circles around, so it's a lot easier doing this digitally, but the colouring is kind of the same as how I would approach it in real, on physical canvas and using paint. So what we've done is duplicated our original layer and coloured it with the red or brown, the reddish brownish colour, because we're kind of doing a brownish reddy coloured eye. So it's doing all different colour, all different styles of colours of eyes previously. So I thought I'd do a brown eye. I've got brown eyes as well, incidentally. So yeah, so what we're doing is we're just creating circles by just basically duplicating each layer and adjusting the size. So now we're just fitting in the second circle, the iris part, to fit in central to the white of the eyeball circle. And to colour each circle, all you need to do is just drag that, like I'm doing there, just drag that paint tool over your shape, and that'll just fill in your area. So what we've done there is duplicated another circle and coloured it black, as you just saw. And we're just going to align the pupil with the iris and the white of the eye, and just moving that around with my hands and the Apple Pencil. So you can see what's going on here. I'll try and explain as much as possible as the video goes through. But this method, this is pretty straightforward and simple way of creating an image which I think looks relatively realistic, or kind of sort of airbrushed, because I tend to use the airbrushing tools on these programs more. I've only been using this program, Procreate, for just over a week now, and I got the iPad just over a week ago, and getting into Procreate, so I downloaded Procreate, and it's so user-friendly. Mind you, I have had some experience in Adobe Photoshop, so perhaps that has helped, especially like with layers and things like that. So we're using our layers there, and you can see we got our 3 layers of the white of the eyeball, iris and pupil there, and I'm just altering that background layer on the eyeball, and we're using Alpha Lock. I think it's Alpha Lock. I've got a brain lock now. I think it's Alpha Lock. And you can shade over your object and it won't go outside of the object, so you won't get any loose paint here, there and everywhere, so it keeps it within the object, which is fantastic. And as you can see there, I'm just shading in some pure white to give some depth to the eyeball, or the white of the eyeball. And then switching to the blending tool, which is symbolized by a finger, and you can use all the brushes on each. You got paintbrush icon, merging or blending icon, and a rubber, and you can use the whole paintbrush toolkit on each one. So if I'm rubbing out, I'll select whatever I want. So in this case, I'll select the airbrush and use that as rubbing out, or blending. I got select an airbrush type, and of course with the painting, select an airbrush also. That's mostly in what I'm doing in this video, but of course you got a whole array of things that you can choose from: pencils, pens, paintbrushes, all kinds of stuff. Pretty amazing. Well, I'm blown away by the program. Or Procreate, I think is absolutely brilliant. And there's different ways of doing things like shortcuts. You can use 2 fingers to do this, that, and the other. I was trying to use 2 fingers to get the alpha lock on there, but I ended up not succeeding very well and just pulling the whole iPad out of the way. Right, so now what we're doing, we've just gone onto the iris now, and we've alpha locked that, and we're just shading around the edge of the iris, so you can actually go outside of the circle and it'll only put the paint onto the actual iris. So obviously the iris is in front of the white of the eye and behind the pupil, the black pupil, so the second layer. And just basically I'm just working through some shades between highlights, the dark areas and mid-tones. So our first colour which we filled in would be our mid-tone, and just darken around the sides now with a darker brown, and you can just adjust that in your palette or the paint thingamajig. Now I'm using the airbrushes, and now onto the merging tool and using the airbrush thingamajig in that also, just to blend those colours in some more. Just going back to the mid-tone there and adjusting. On the left hand side you've got the bottom slider as opacity, and the top slider is the size of the brush, which is very handy indeed. I mean, another thing, the beauty about like digital art is you can zoom in if you want to for details and bits and pieces, which is great for me because I think my eyes aren't so good as what they used to be, so that's going to be ideal for me if I want to do continued drawing. But yeah, just all round, I've always sort of liked traditional art, and I've sort of not necessarily turned my nose up at digital art, but I've always liked the traditional art side of things. I guess sort of like maybe some sort of romantic idea about traditional art, and I like doing traditional art as well. There's a couple of videos on the channel with, funny enough, drawing an eye with pencil on some paper, and there's a dog drawing on homemade parchment paper using tea bags. But yeah, but I love digital art, and it's amazing what you can do, and probably better for the environment as well, because you're not using up all that paper and materials. And there's just so much you could do with it. I'm just like blown away with the whole thing. Anyway, back to the eyeball. So now we're putting some highlights on the iris part, adding some depth, and we've got a kind of off-white colour. It's kind of like a tinge of yellow or perhaps orangey brown, and I've gone behind the iris there And you've kind of got that sort of like eclipse look, which I kind of like doing with eyes. You sort of, I suppose, you're stylizing the eye, so sort of more artistic than rather than realistic, but I think it adds a nice effect. And now we're adding, like, on the top right hand part of the eye, some highlights. So if you can imagine, the light is shining onto the eye from the top right hand corner of the screen, and that's what's creating the depth for the eye. So just building up those highlights, and with the spray tool and using the paintbrush and blender to blend in all those colors. And also as well, I use alternating between sizes and kind of drawing in some lines for the iris, which you might have seen me doing, and then just sort of like refining and blending and drawing the lines in, merging them in, then drawing the lines in again, you know, like this sort of like muscle lines in your eyes, or whatever you call them, cones, is it? So kind of sort of like trying to emulate that look. And go around the outside again with a dark brown on the iris. And like I say, just continually shading. You can go on forever with this part, but you'll kind of know when you're about there and satisfied with what you got. Yeah, so this video comes out okay on YouTube. I mean, while I'm editing it in the video editor, it tends to be not as good quality compared to the actual final rendered version, but I got a feeling this one's going to be not picking up so many of the details, right? Like more of the details that's actually on the Procreate app, you know, like if you can read the words and see, like I'm on layers now, I don't know whether you can read that properly. And of course I've got an iPad mini as well, so that's half the size of your regular iPad. So maybe get a iPad Pro sometime. Anyway, back to the eyeball again. So we've duplicated the first layer, the largest circle, and then we just filled that in with solid black. And I'm using the opacity function just to make the eyeball, or not the eyeball, that layer opaque. And then we'll use the rubber tool with the spray brush, and we'll just rub out the areas that we don't want to create some more depth and add an added layer of highlight. Now this is quite a good way of doing shading on DigiArt. And also as well, I didn't do it on this video, but I might in some pictures, like on the bottom left hand side of the white of the eye, kind of shade that in a little bit darker with kind of a sort of dark grey to black sort of colour. But I didn't do it on here, I thought it was okay as it was. So continue. Now I'm blending in the that top layer, that opaque layer, just to smooth out the shading, and going back on that first layer, the white of the eyeball, and blending in the paint there also. Just refining it, sort of thing. And now we're going to add some sparkle to the eyes, like the reflection. And that's on another layer, so the paint doesn't mix with our paint on the other layers, so you just get a pure white, or the light colour that we're using. So I've got the spray tool there set to a small size, So I'm putting 2 dots there as the reflective look. And I'll make the spray nozzle bigger and turn the opacity down to give that kind of glare. But you see I'm like drawing in the whites of those sparkles there, but you don't really need to do that. And you'll see in a minute, because I actually sort of blend them out a little bit and do those little dots again. And all you need to do is like hold the pencil down, the Apple Pencil down onto the screen, and you'll get kind of like a perfect circle spray by just holding down the Apple Pencil. But you want your opacity set to 0 when you're doing that. So you can see I'm blending in now using the merge blending tool, and there I am just holding down the Apple Pencil just to get better circles for those sparkles in the eye. And what we do then is just spray around those sparkles a little bit to make them look sparkly with the opacity down again, and then do the same again and just blend in the sparkly glare reflection of the eye. So there's going to be no background in the, what we're talking about. I've got to be words mixed up as I usually do. There's no background music in this video, as people have voted against having background music. So there's no background music. But if the vote goes the other way, then I'll start putting background music back on the videos. So just choosing the background there on the image. But I do create another layer and fill that in with a kind of very light beige off-white type of thing, or maybe sort of a magnolia colour, but it's more of a sort of a beigey colour, I would say. Very, very light beige, just to kind of contrast against the white of the eye. And by the way, all the music, well, most of the music on my channel was made by yours truly anyway. So perhaps a lot of you don't like the music that I create. But if you do like the music I create, you can go over to Moonrunner Music. So that's in the related channels on my channel here, Drama Mask Evolution. Anyway, I'm waffling again. So there we are, we've got an off-white background with the eyeball. And what we're going to do now is merge down the layers of the eyeball to create just one layer, so we can move the whole eyeball about instead of like moving it around layer by layer, which would be a nightmare. So there you can see I'm moving the whole eyeball. So that's compressed into one image now. And just for added effect, and another little trick to learn, is we're going to add a little bit of a shadow underneath the eyeball so it looks like a floating eyeball. So we're drawing in an ellipse there. I don't know if you can see that. I hope you can see it. I take my word for it. We're drawing in an ellipse, like how we created those circles with the eye at the beginning. So just filled in with some black there. I'm going to place that underneath the eyeball. This is the beauty, you see. You can like alter the sizes by using the selector tool, which is the kind of cursor arrow looking thing, and that selects your layer, and you can move it around, stretch it and alter it, distort it, and all kinds of things. Amazing. Anybody familiar with Photoshop? I mean, a lot of these features are in Photoshop also, of course. The Photoshop is a great tool as well, as everybody knows. Very powerful indeed. So right, now we've got our ellipse there in black for our shadow. We're going to apply some blur to the shadow, and that'll be Gaussian Blur. Gaussian Blur, is that what you call it? Or pronounce it, I should say. So that'll give us a shadowy looking image. So here we go with the blur. So there we are. You can see I'm just using the slider there to select the amount of blur that we want. And now we're going to select the opacity and use the slider to select the amount of opacity also. So kind of go through this, and I will also go back to the select tool where we can adjust the size of the shadow to fit the eyeball. You can move it around. So that's great. So if you're painting on a real canvas, obviously you'd have to paint it, repaint it, and it'll be a lot more bother. And you can tap the screen as well while you've selected your object, and that'll adjust, like finally adjust the position to where you want your object. So tap into the right hand side of the object, it will nudge it to the right, and any direction you choose to move it by doing the same thing. So there we are, that's pretty much it. Just got to sign my name. So, oh yeah, if you put your finger over the top of the image and just hold it there for a bit, it will select the color which is on the screen in your paint box. So now I'm going into the ink pens, selecting technical pen, and now just sign my name at the bottom. So put in Drama 2020. I sometimes forget I'm drawing on the screen. I use my finger to wipe off the ink sometimes. It's crazy. So there we are, job done. And also, it records the process of you drawing your image. So we'll play back that on the video, and you can see what's going on there by selecting the spanner icon and play video. So that's what we've done drawing this video. So played back in about 5 seconds. So I'll save that and email it to me to put on this video along with the image. Sharing it in a JPEG format, saving it to the iPad, and then I'll email it to myself so I can get it up on the computer and into the video editor. So pretty straightforward, very user friendly. I'm blown away by the program, love it. So there we are. That's the downloaded video. I just saved there, and you saw just a moment ago. And the picture. So there we are. I hope you enjoyed the video, the first iPad Procreate video. Thanks for watching, and over and out for now.